So we have been studying historical fiction this week, and we have been talking about how to know whether a text is informational, meaning it's straight history, nothing but the facts, just information, whether it's a memoir or expository text or biography or autobiography. And if it's historical fiction, for the most part, you're going to have some words that say something like inspired by a true tale or based on a true story, or there'll be an author's note saying, I heard this story and ran with it and decided to tell this, and here's the accurate historical information to go along with it. So historical fiction is a story, it's fiction, but it's based on either a real person, a real time, a real event, or kind of a mixture of all of the above. So today's read aloud includes a lot of folk tales from old-timey American pioneering days. And so we began class today, for those of you who weren't there, with Johnny Cash singing Sweet Betsy from Pike. And there's a lot of songs in this book that are kind of old-timey folk songs. And so I put a link in Google Classroom to the National Archives for those songs if you want to hear more of them. I don't think Sweet Betsy from Pike is in there, but the Johnny Cash version is definitely on YouTube if if my version isn't, enough to. It's definitely country when country was country. There's nothing happy about that song right there. Sometimes folk songs were to tell a story, sometimes to pass the time, sometimes a little bit of a lesson here and there. So sometimes silly, and sometimes sad. And Sweet Betsy from Pike is definitely a sad one. So this story is not about Sweet Betsy from Pike. This is called Stagecoach Sal. Stagecoach Sal is inspired by a true tale. It says that right there, inspired by a true tale. We have this image of, you can tell she's dressed in pioneer style clothing. These are pioneer style houses. She's got some horses' reins in her hands. Definitely looks a little bit out west. So I'll tell you, this is based in the 1800s in the gold rush, the go west young man, find your fortune days. And so we begin with that, Stagecoach Sal. I need to get into character. For this one, I have to become Sal because it's told in the first person by Sal, by Stagecoach Sal. You might want to adjust your volume at some points. Authors tend to use first person so that we can get the character's feelings and thoughts and really see things through the character's eyes. And often for people your age, they'll write those picture books or those novels from someone similar to your age so that you can connect with that character on a better level. I was knee-high to a grasshopper when Pa first lifted me up to the shotgun seat. Now, we talked about the history of that word today in class. Shotgun, like when you call shotgun to ride in the front seat next to the person who's driving, would have come from the stagecoach days, because the stagecoach driver had to hold the reins and hold the reins tight. There was, rocky crevices that they could fall in. It was dangerous driving. It was also dangerous because there were robbers who wanted to rob the stagecoaches because they were carrying mail, which often contained gold nuggets to send back to the family that, hey, we've got a little something out here, and passengers as well. So the shotgun rider would literally have to have a shotgun and be able to protect the stagecoach and the driver from anyone who was trying to attack or rob the stagecoach. So I'll go back. Now you gotta stay in character. I was knee-high to a grasshopper when Pa first lifted me up to the shotgun seat. Take care, Tadpole, called Mama. Those tiny toes of yours don't even touch the floorboards. I didn't mind. Oh, let me hold the ribbons, Pa. Giddy up, I hollered to our four-in-hand. Our Sal can sing like a bird, I heard Mama say, and it sure seems like she wants to fly like one, too. Now, Mama is very concerned about her little girl, and she'll refer to her, it's just so tiny, and you sing, and so pretty. The actual person that this is based on really was a beauty queen and an award-winning singer. She was very good at that, but she was also good at other things, too. So you can pursue your own passion, something we've been talking about, and find your own way, and it doesn't necessarily have to follow a stereotype or what other people want. Mama was right. I love to sit high on the stagecoach seat, the breeze in my face and the thunder of hooves in my ears. But the truth is, on this whole wide earth, you won't find anything more dusty and bouncy than a stagecoach journey. That's one reason Pa liked to have me along. Of course, I helped collect the fares, that's the money. But I also sang for the passengers. And whenever I belted out Sweet Betsy from Pike or Polly Wolly Doodle, I kept grown-ups from grumbling and babies from bawling. Now in this picture you can see she's not the shotgun rider. She actually has the reins, and Pa is her shotgun rider. Oh, I went to bed, but it wasn't any use. Sing Polly Wolly Doodle all day. My feet stuck out a chicken roost. Sing Polly Wolly Doodle all day. Now, I didn't mind helping Pa out, but more than anything, I longed to drive myself. Of course, I didn't mean for Pa to fall into a hornet's nest and get so swelled up he couldn't hold the reins. But as it turns out, that's how I finally got my chance to drive. There he is, falling into the hornet's nest down there. And here's the map of the mail route the stagecoach would have to take to get from Ukiah to Willits. Don't you worry, Pa, I told him. I'll get the mail from Ukiah to Willits on time. Oh, it's a long journey, Pa managed to squeak out. No passengers tonight, just mail. No passengers! Ma flapped her apron in distress. You mean she'll be driving alone at night? She's worried about her little girl, right? Alone at night with Poetic Pete roaming the countryside? Every soul west of the Mississippi knew Poetic Pete. He carried out his hold-ups by speaking in rhyme. Folks said he was so polite, he'd never interrupt a lady. Yet he'd managed to rob hundreds of stagecoaches. Don't worry, Mama. I'll protect those letters filled with precious gold nuggets, I declared. That notorious no-good highwayman will be up against a crack shot. I mean, she's a good shooter, right? Why, I'm a gal who can plug a nickel from as far as I can see it and shoot out a rattler's rattles if I care to. Remember, I took first prize in roping, trick riding, and shooting. You also came in first in singing, Mama reminded me. Mama would really like her to be more of a lady, right? Giddy up, I hollered. As I rolled away, Mama waved her apron shriek, Drive, Sally, drive! Before you could say Wells Fargo Stagecoach, my team and I were headed over the hills. To pass the time, I sang my favorite songs. I could tell from the way my horse's ears pricked up that they liked my singing, as much as two-legged critters do. Sometimes I change the words a bit to fit my foreign hand and me. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. She'll be driving 4 black horses. She'll be driving 4 black horses. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. We went along fine till we came to the loneliest bend in the road. Suddenly, a fine-looking gentleman popped out and flagged me down with his handkerchief. The horses started in surprise. Whoa, I cried. Please, miss, I'm stranded. He tipped his hat. Won't you give me a ride to town? Now that fancy suit couldn't fool me. This was Poetic Pete himself, the most polite bandit in all of California. I had to think fast. He was a quick draw with words I knew. Why, if I let him get the chance, he'd recite a poem like this. Give me all your gold dust now, for my name is Pete the Poet. And if you don't, I'll stick you up before you even know it. What do you think she's gonna do? Do you think Poetic Pete is gonna get the best of Stagecoach Sal? All at once, my mama's words about my singing success came back to me. Thinking fast, I beamed him a big smile. Sir, I'd be mighty, mighty glad to have your company here on the stagecoach on the shotgun seat of this fine night. After all, I'm just a merry maid, and these roads are full of bandits. Poetic Pete climbed up. I cracked my long whip and off we went. Well, I knew I couldn't let him say a word or I'd be done for, so I took a good deep breath and began to sing. Oh, don't you remember sweet Betsy from Pike, who crossed the wide prairie with her lover Ike, with 2 yoke of oxen, a big yellow dog, a tall Shanghai rooster, and 1 spotted hog. I sang happy songs and sad songs. Spoiler alert, everything pretty much dies from Betsy on Pike's little journey there. Country when country was country. New songs and old songs, traveling tunes and beguiling ballads. And every time Poetic Pete figured to open his mouth, well, I'd just start right up singing again. Oh, I went down south for to see my Sal, singing Polly Wolly Doodle all day. My Sal, she am a funky gal, singing Polly Wolly Doodle all day. Look at his face. He is so unimpressed with her. I love that illustration. It's like one of my favorite parts of the book. The sun went down. The moon came up and still I sang. I sang as we bounced around the big boulders, down the dusty hills and around teeth-clenching curves. Shoo fly, don't bother me. Shoo fly, don't bother me. Shoo fly, don't bother me. For I belong to somebody. I feel like a morning star. I feel like a morning star. I was sure anxious to see that there morning star myself. When will we get there? I thought in desperation. I was running out of verses and voice. Suddenly, I felt a very heavy weight slump against my shoulder. I'd sung Poetic Pete right off to sleep. Quick as a cockroach skulling around a campfire, I whisked out my handcuffs and slipped them over his wrist. Wake up, you rhyming robber, the jig is up, I declared, pulling up to the jailhouse just as the morning sun painted the skies as pink as my Sunday parasol. And that's the story of how I single-handedly snared the Cantoing crook. As for me, I drove that team many more miles over those mountain roads, singing to my passengers and delivering the mail safely every time. Folks called me Singing Sal, the stagecoach gal, and my exploits were known from here to San Francisco. I never got robbed, and I never stopped singing. Oh, my Sal, she is a maiden fair, sing Polly Wolly Doodle all day, with curly eyes and laughing hair, sing Polly Wolly Doodle all day. There's an author's note, which is typical of historical fiction. Stagecoach Sal is a fictional story based on the life of Delia Haskett Rawson. According to the records I've been able to find, Delia was the first and possibly the only woman to carry the U.S. mail by stagecoach in California. Delia was born in 1861, the daughter of Miranda and Samuel Haskett, pioneers who arrived in California in 1854, settling in what is now known as, or is now Petaluma. Her mother was a teacher. Her father served as sheriff, postmaster, stagecoach driver, coroner, tax collector, and justice of the peace. Delia must have been a lively, high-spirited girl. Known as a local beauty and an accomplished singer, she was also a crack shot, expert rider, and roper. In a May 16, 1935 article in the San Dimas Press, Delia recounted the time she went horseback riding the day after a ball at which she had been honored as the most beautiful woman there. So she was named Beauty Queen at the ball the night before. Next day she went horseback riding, and suddenly she caught sight of a salmon trying to swim upstream. I dismounted and in my excitement waded right into the stream, clothes and all, on and on, round and round, almost catching it time and time again. Finally, after hours it seemed, I caught the big brute by the tail. What to do with it then? I took a death grip and cradled the startled salmon in my strong young arms and succeeded in reaching home unimpaired but very dirty, fishy, and tired. Delia began driving stagecoaches when she was about 14. She became known as Singin' Delia Haskett because she sang to passengers along the journey. In this story, Poetic Pete is based on Black Bart, an outlaw known as the Poetic Robber for his polite manners and his habit of leaving a poem behind after each stick-up. Delia recalled that he had actually ridden in her stagecoach a time or two, although he never robbed her. But she carried a pistol and handcuffs just in case. Black Bart's real name was Charles E. Bowles. Caught after a robbery in 1883, he was sent to San Quentin prison. He was released in 1888 and disappeared soon afterward. In 1934, when Delia was in her 70s, the Pioneer Stage Drivers of California Association was formed. Delia was elected vice president. There are many internet resources for American folk songs, and if you want to hear more of them, you can click on the link I sent you in Google Classroom. That's the end of this book. When we're talking about author's message in historical fiction, often we're trying to learn a lesson from history. And I feel like the lesson that goes along with this ties in with what we spent the first 2 weeks of school talking about finding your own way, being true to yourself, finding the things that make you come alive. Maybe they're not what everyone else had planned for you or thought was what you should be or should be doing. She kind of stayed true to herself and did her own thing. You know, she knew what she enjoyed doing, and she did that. And she didn't have to fall into stereotypes too. She was beautiful and a beauty queen. She could sing. You know, I connect with her very much for all these things. She was a crack shot. She was rope and ride, trick rider, all these things. No, none of those things. But we can apply that to our lives and think about finding our own way. And maybe it's not what our parents had in mind for us, like her mom in this historical fiction part of this. Again, we're talking about historical fiction. We're talking about stories that may not be totally, and are probably not totally grounded in history, but elements of them are. For example, she's not the actual person who arrested Black Bart, who is known as Poetic Pete in this story. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed Stagecoach Sal and that you have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.